movement to make a new category of fiction called nostalgic history because it takes place in the 80s. I feel like it's just recent enough that it's not quite historic, even for those of us who do not remember the 80s whatsoever. Alright, hello and welcome back. I'm excited because I have yet another advanced reader copy. Thank you to the Wandering Jellyfish bookshop. This week it's In the Beautiful Country by Jane Kuo. So I have to admit, I was a little nervous about this book just because I haven't read a ton of middle grade fiction lately. So I wasn't entirely sure what to expect, but I was pleasantly surprised, just kind of all over. In part because, for one, it's a novel in verse, so that was kind of a unique little surprise. And two, I ended up liking it a lot more than I was expecting. To me, it kind of felt a little like House on Mango Street, but whereas House on Mango Street is vignettes in prose, In the Beautiful Country is more like vignettes in verse. So we meet Anna, and she's at the beginning of the book 10 years old. She's about to be 11, living in Taiwan with her family, and they're about to move to America. Well, she and her mom are. Her dad has already been in America for a few months, and they're just super excited to go and meet with him again because she's 11, 10. She misses her dad, and she is excited to be in the world of Disneyland and all of this stuff. But it's not what she expects. It's more difficult, and she and her family have a difficult time kind of setting those roots and finding that confidence. And for that reason, because I feel like we get a decent number of immigrant stories, but I feel like we don't get a ton of them from the perspective of an adolescent. And so I think that's one thing that makes it really unique. Something else that I really enjoyed is that Kuo is just a very emotionally evocative writer. I think some of that comes from the fact that it's in verse. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like there's just something inherently more emotional about poetry, even if it's in blank verse, than prose is. Not to say that one is better at conveying emotion, but there's just some element of poetry, for me at least, that the feelings are all just heightened, and it makes it that much more exciting and impactful. And so the fact that this is also a little bit inspired by her own journey to America, it makes it that much more powerful. Because in reading it, you feel the vulnerability, you feel the honesty that Kuo has poured into all of these verses that make up the book, and you really see Anna grow as a character. On a structural note, in addition to the verses that I've already mentioned, the book is separated into 4 parts. So it's leaving Taiwan. I keep passing part 2. Part 2, What I Didn't Know. Part 3 is The Year the Locusts Have Eaten, and part 4 is Home. And so even though some of the titles might not be exactly like The Year the Locusts Have Eaten, might not be exactly indicative upon first glance about what the story is about, I think, or that section of the story is about, I think the other ones really kind of are clear. Because you see, in reading the book, you see Anna as excited, and then you see her as questioning, and then you see her really kind of struggling, and then you see a slightly more positive note. And I really don't want to give too much away because this does come out in June, and I really hope that you are inspired to give it a shot. But yeah, I think the character growth is so interesting because I feel like a lot of times when we think of character growth, we think of it very linearly. Like they start maybe as kind of that underdog character, and then they become the hero. For Anna, it's not quite that linear. It's a little more up and down, because she starts out as confident and she's excited, and it's to the point where her cousin is like, oh my gosh, shut up. We get it. You're going to America. You're lucky. Calm down. And then you see her questioning herself, and then you see her getting a little bit confident and like, maybe things will get better. And then you see her questioning herself again and like, should we really be this nice to people? And then you see her fall a little bit because she was mean to someone. And then you see her grow again because she's like, wait, I feel really bad about being mean to someone. I need to fix this. And it's just so emotional. And I just loved that. Also, kind of structurally, since it is in verse and all the verses are usually like, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 pages max, it's a really quick read. So if you're not super familiar with novels in verse, I think this is a really approachable style. And B, if you're maybe in a reading rut, it might be a fun way to kind of get back into it. Because even though this is a middle grade novel, and maybe you like me are like, ooh, I haven't read anything but adult in a while, or I haven't read anything but YA in a while, it's kind of a nice little break. It's a good way to shake things up, because even though it's middle grade, it talks about deep things, and it's really refreshing, and it's really unique, and it's so engaging that it's a really pleasant read. It's definitely emotional, and there's some parts with some bullying. There's some parts with some racial slurs. There are parts where you see her own people kind of snubbing her. And it talks about how, because like her mom is Taiwanese and they go to Chinese church, how there are like some tensions there. And so it deals with topics that are complex and they are nuanced. And I think it's a really powerful read and a really good insight into what that experience can be like for some people. And so for that reason, I think it's definitely worth your time. That said, since there are examples of prejudice, it might be a little bit triggering for some readers, but it could also be really inspiring for some readers too. Because if you are, for example, someone who has experienced bullying, maybe seeing Anna work through that, maybe that might be helpful to you, or maybe that might be healing for you. So I don't think you should discount it because of some of those potential little triggers. Because overall, it's just a really beautiful story, and I loved Anna as a character and as a narrator, and I loved seeing her growth, and I really wanted to be her friend. She's just super sweet. So I definitely do recommend Jane Kuo's In the Beautiful Country. I'm very excited for it to come out and be on shelves in June of this year. Hopefully you'll pick up a copy. And thanks to Wandering Jellyfish for giving me an advance one, because this was a really pleasant surprise and a lot of fun to read. Next week I have The French Gift by Kirsty Manning. It's yet another World War II fiction, historical fiction. So very excited about that. That's just kind of my unofficial shtick. And I'll get back to you with my thoughts on that next week. In the meantime, happy reading and thanks.